Right, our guest this morning, local poet James McInerney. No surprise, he's been here loads and loads of times before. Good morning, James.
Good morning.
You've been here loads of times before, but we're working on the assumption, maybe, listener, you've not encountered the breakfast show when James has been with us. So how did you actually start? How did you start your interest in poetry?
Well, I just kind of come out of nowhere, really. I started writing things down with classical music. Started there, just writing words and then sharing on the social networking sites, which were very basic at them. That was before Facebook. It was kind of news groups, actually via email, sharing my poetry. People started liking it, and I thought, okay, you get good feedback. It spurs you on to write more poems. And then big things like Facebook started happening, and then you could share it everywhere, and it kind of took off from there.
Could you have done it without Facebook? I know you did the news groups and that. It must have been a struggle with that.
Yeah, it was.
The reach wasn't terrific, was it?
It wasn't, but I had email, and I started emailing people and asking for help, and kind of went from there. And I had a lady called Helen from a radio station that actually started voicing some of my poetry. Then I started using YouTube, like doing the spoken word poetry, sharing it, and then people started liking it. It gives you more confidence, and it kind of took off from there.
No, there is obviously quite an interest in poetry, but it's not part of not a major part of the national curriculum in schools, is it?
It's not, but they have actually started to get more involved with it now. The current government reintroduced it back into schools, and kind of the kids now are starting to learn it at school and kind of study poems and look at more modern poets now. So it is better than it used to be in schools. It's still not great, but it is starting to improve in schools. So kids of a younger age are growing up with poetry again. So
they've expanded from the sort of the Keats and all that sort of thing.
Yes, from the basics, the popular poets, to modern poets and kind of contemporary poets and people like me. And my work's been used in secondary schools. They've studied my poems for GCSE level.
Because most people sort of think that poems have to rhyme, don't they?
Yeah.
But it's not right. It's not true.
I was under the illusion that they did when I first started, because I was naive. Kind of started that way, and as you progress through poetry, you kind of work out that actually you don't need to, and you can do it your own way. And if your audience like your work, they can like your style. So it's your style, as opposed to you're trying to be like everyone else and make things how they should be because that's how they're supposed to be. So you get kind of an audience, and you start to change how you write to your own style. And then if they like your work, they stay with you. So you can kind of, it doesn't have to rhyme. The line between prose and poetry is very thin. So prose is poetry and vice versa kind of thing.
So how old were you when you actually got interested in it? Because a lot of people think, poetry.
Yeah, I don't know. It must have been, I would probably say 20s.
Oh, right.
Mid-20s, 98, I think. Yeah, about that. Probably about 20 odd there. And just kind of, it's come out of nowhere, really. I don't know how it happened. I didn't like poetry at school because poetry wasn't taught at school. It was like Shakespeare. You know, people with frilly collars learning about Shakespeare, not actually learning about poetry.
There's tedium, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you have a favourite poet of sort of the older style, or is it purely the new?
I don't know. I don't really have a favourite poet because I tend not to read other people's poems. My fear is that you'll read other people's work and then you'll kind of take on their words, and subconsciously you'll turn into them. So I'm fearful of kind of reading other people's work and the fact that it might influence me and change me. I know it's a good thing to be influenced, but I kind of like to just do my own thing.
There's only so many words out there. You've got to copy some, haven't you?
Yeah, well, I've wrote over 300 poems, and it's getting hard now to think of new material, because it's like, how many times can you write about the same thing in a different way? And it does get hard after about 300 poems.
Yeah, so, it must do.
Yeah, it is.
But you'll keep going.
There's loads more to come.
Typical day for a poet, then?
Basically, is first of all a lot of updating. You do a lot because I do it on my own. I'm a one-man band. You have to kind of like update a lot of stuff. So you have to check. Turning on your phone is a nightmare because you get so many notifications of everything that's happened, emails. Kind of wading through all that first. About midday, you kind of like start looking at writing new stuff, and then you're back to sharing it all over again, which again is updating loads of social networking sites. So it's kind of like a lot of social networking, and then in between you're writing, and then obviously writing or currently writing my new book. So it's kind of like a busy day.
So your new book, is that going to be all new stuff, or are you releasing that stuff as you write it as
releasing
well?
kind of bits of it, because you have to kind of see what people think. You have to get an idea of if you change your style a little bit, if people still like it, and the ones that really get a lot of likes and shares, yeah, that's good. And kind of like keep a lot back for the next book that people haven't seen.
Now, you've got 2 books out at the moment, haven't you? Mm-hmm. Which is...
In Between the Lines.
And Bloom.
Bloom, yep.
Third one coming out end of the year, beginning of the next year?
Yeah, it'll be winter this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there different themes for each of the...
It's kind of like
collections?
love, lost, kind of that kind of theme I stick with. Like Stephen King does horror. I kind of do love, lost, and people like that kind of theme. I've changed it up a little bit. They don't get the best response on those. The people tend to like the theme that you stick with. So I've always kind of stuck with that similar theme. And I just that's the kind of way I write. That's the kind of thing I do, and I just kind of love it, really.
Now, you started this, you said about 98, something along those lines. At what point did you think, I'd like to expand on my hobby and perhaps make a living at it?
Well, I got involved with the BBC, actually. I went on and I was just doing a similar thing like this. And in between the songs, the man did say to me, the presenter, I think it was Bernie Keith at the time, he said, you need a book out. You need to have something. You've got all these poems. You need to have a book out. So I kind of went back and got a book out. And it kind of started from there. When I had something then to sell and talk about, I was on the BBC a lot, and I had something to actually sell to people. Like, hey, do you like my poetry? I have a book out if you're interested, and people buying them, and it kind of took off from there, which kind of spurs you on to say, okay, people like my work, I need to then write another book, which means you need to write a lot more poems to fit in that book. So it's kind of all kind of built from that, really.
Can you actually make a living out of writing poetry?
I think you can, but you need to have, like most authors, you need to have a lot of books out. You need to have, people say authors don't become famous till at least their 12th book.
Right.
Yeah. So you have
Tend
to
to go.
Yes. So you have to kind of have a lot of books out, so that when people buy, they'll buy 2 books. If you've got 2, if you've got 3, you're going to make more money. You times that by multiple amount of people on a daily basis, then you start making a lot of money. But you have to have the volume of books out.
So you don't get people just buy one and read it and think, oh, I like that, and buy the next one.
No.
Are they stocking up on you then?
Yeah, they tend to buy 2 at once because A, it's cheaper than on Amazon, and Amazon sometimes do deals. If you buy one, you get a second one cheaper, and you get free shipping. So they think it's easy just to buy two for the price, and get it all in one go.
Now, up till now, apart from sort of personal appearances, you've been using Amazon. Does that give you any? Does it allow you to have a map of the world and pin where you're getting your sales from?
Well, you do tend to see where they're bought from, and it is good because people around the world who don't live in the UK can actually buy the books, and you obviously make more money the further you spread. But I'm looking now at a different avenue, kind of as well as Amazon, a different avenue of trying to get into the bookstores.
Right. And that, you think, will be better? Help?
It'll just be another kind of string to my bow, really. It'll be another way of people always ask, can I buy your book in a store? That's the one thing they kind of say. Is it in our local store? And I say, no, it's only on Amazon. And you feel as though you should be offering something more. So kind of going down an avenue at the moment to try and get that happening. So fingers crossed.
I still think Amazon is good though, because you can have a thought of an evening. You see something on the telly, or you hear something. You hear perhaps an interview you've done with Bernie being repeated on the nationwide BBC thing of an evening, and you think, oh, I like that book. Log on, order it here, day or so. Instead of having to wait to the weekend, traipse into town, and probably won't have it, so they'll have to order it and that.
I understand that, but I also worked on the principle that at one point ebooks were very popular. People love ebooks, so we did the ebook versions, and the paperbacks still outsell the ebooks. People, even though people want things now, like in an instant, people have actually brought more books than ebooks. And I thought ebooks would be the way to go because it's the next, revolution of digital technology. But actually, in that respect, people also, as well as buying a book online, they also like to go into bookshops and buy books that way. So
I think as well, it's nice to have something tangible there.
Oh
isn't it?
yes, I love a book, physical book. I just did the ebooks because it was another, again, string to your bow. It was another option of selling things. And people did ask for ebooks, but ebooks are not selling as much as I thought they would have done. People haven't embraced that technology of the Kindles and everything else. It's kind of, people want a physical book. And
Yeah, I think maybe it's just a step too far, isn't it, into sort of digitising your life.
There's so many options. There's Apple Books, so many different options of ebooks. I think people, and there's so many free ebooks, but people just tend to want to buy a book, even if it's not on Amazon. They want to go in a shop, like the main high street ones, and physically have a look for all the books, because that's a nice experience. They're expensive, but it's a nice experience to walk in a bookshop and buy books. But there's so many different people out there, so many different ways to do it. You just have to cover all.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And as a kind of writer, my own personal bucket list is to have a kind of book in a store, a physical store, and one of the big name ones. It's just on my bucket list, really. It's just one of those things you tick. Writing a book was a bucket list. Getting it into libraries and schools was a bucket list. It's done. Next thing is a bookstore. So that's the kind of loads of things, life goals that I want to achieve.
But what after that?
I don't know.
Just to keep the momentum going, I suppose.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens with all the kind of what happens in the future. It might not be a future if Trump and everything else.
There'll be a future. It'll just perhaps be slightly different. So is there actually a place for poetry in the modern world? Do you think the fast?
I think so. I think because poetry is so relatable and people read my poems and they can find themselves in them somewhere. Everyone can, in their life they've gone through something and then they read them and it helps them. So in that sense, I think yes. And also people can learn poetry at school. So they can, it's two things. They can learn it at school and also it helps people get through problems. It helps people get through situations they've kind of currently going through.
Can you teach poetry?
Yeah, because I did a lot of workshops with the county council for like a year, teaching children of all ages and adults as well, actually, how to write poetry from a basic level, who've never written poetry before, and it was really successful. So,
it just seems strange how you can because we're saying it doesn't have to rhyme, it doesn't have to. So it's not as simple as saying to somebody, that's got to rhyme with that one there, that's got to be there. You've got to have so many lines, and it's got to scan sort of thing. It doesn't.
Well, you can have kind of starters. You can give. We did. There's different ways. Blackout poetry, where you take a book and you black out words and leave other words. So all the words are there for you. You just basically black out the words you don't want to use and make like a new sentence or a new poem. And you could do magnetic poetry, which has got words and the words are already there, and you just make a new poem out of the words. So you can start by giving them all the words, and they choose the words instead of having to think about what they have to write about. And it just goes from there, really. And surprisingly, I've never come across anyone that couldn't do it.
All right. And the kids like it?
Yeah, they love it.
Yeah?
The kids love it. And now, because they say they're currently learning at school, so when they come to the workshop, say, do you do poetry? Oh, yeah, we do poetry at school. So you've already got that start.
And what sort of age group is that?
All ages. They actually do it at primary school now.
All right.
They learn about poetry, just the basics, and then all the way up to secondary and beyond. So every kind of child really has come across poetry now, whereas before they would have learnt about Shakespeare, not necessarily his poems, but the person himself. And
I think that, speaking personally, I think it put you off.
I found it boring, yeah. You didn't necessarily learn about his poems, you tend to learn about him, his life, what he did, and it was boring. And that kind of didn't make me want to write poetry, but I just suddenly started one day and then here I am. So 3 books later.
Absolutely. Now we've said you use Amazon and a lot of the social medias, the Twitters, Facebook, Instagram
and Tumblr.
How else do you get your stuff out there?
Well, kind of like going to the conventions, meeting people in public is very good because you can kind of gauge. They come up to you. It's nice to have them stand there and read your words and then love them and then buy them. Kind of doing face-to-face is much better because they get to see you, that you can explain about yourself, what you've done, and that kind of like is a better way for me because I get to interact with people that like my work as well. So the book signings and everything like that.
So when you go to these comic conventions and that, of the people that turn up at your stall, have they heard of you, or is it just all look and they look at your framed verses and your books and all that sort of thing?
I've had a few times where people have come and said, "I've seen you on Instagram." So it does you do get out there, and people who actually come to the events will come to previous events, so they'll come to the next one, and they'll come to buy something new. So you get to see familiar faces, you get to see people that have known you on social networking sites, and then you get new people that have never seen your work that actually, which is nice for me, they'll read it and say, oh, I love this, I'll buy your books. So you know that you already meet an audience that have never read your work before, but they just haven't met them yet. And that's kind of like what the social networking thing does, is you spread your work out and try and find new people that have never read your work, and then suddenly you find them and they're buying your books and love your work. So it's just so many avenues you could go down.
But you're also doing quite a bit on eBay as well, aren't you?
eBay, yeah, we were selling the frames on eBay, the signed frames, and people wanted to buy them, but they obviously don't live in the country, and it's quite hard to get them if they live like Australia. So we're kind of like buying them, and they were like, I was selling them, and then they were taking pictures at home and sending them in to me of them on their dresser or something with the signed frames. So it's just so many avenues. Again, it's just having the time. It's really having the time to fit everything in and kind of concentrate on one thing, and at the same time get your poems written for your next book. So many, you have to prioritise so much.
So do you leave yourself, right, 2 o'clock until 4 o'clock every day, got to write a poem?
No, because I think if I put that pressure on myself, I would never write a poem. I tend to write a poem while I'm doing the housework. Because when you're distracted by something else, instead of sitting there going, right...
So you've given up the building work completely?
Yeah.
You're now a house husband.
Yes, exactly. But, I mean, it's the best way, because when you actually do that and you're not focused on the poem, you tend to write better because you're not sat in front of a desk bit of paper saying, write. You tend to just come up with things as you're getting on with your normal life, and I'll kind of take a pen and paper with me everywhere, and kind of like, as I'm walking along, I'll think of a line, and it could be the start of a new poem. So kind of like... If you're sat in front of a desk going, right, there's 2 o'clock till 3 o'clock, I've got to write a poem, you won't write anything because the pressure's on you and it just won't be great. So you kind of like do other things whilst writing poetry.
So if I remember rightly from previous chats we've had, it's music that tends to give you an idea. But you say you're doing your housework or whatever, obviously doing the Freddie Mercury, doing the hoovering and all that sort of thing. But... Is it then that you get a line, or could it just be walking around in the street and you suddenly think of something?
Yeah, I mean, I listen to iTunes or Spotify and have that on, and have kind of instrumental film scores on. Or if I'm watching a film, I think, oh, I like that, and search for it. And I have one in the background. If I'm walking around, I have my iPod on, and I'm listening to my music. But things can just, in your mind, can just appear at any time. So I tend to carry a pen and paper with me everywhere, because I'll forget it. I've got such a bad memory that if I don't write it down... It'll be like, oh, it's a wasted opportunity there, and it could have been the next poem. So just like your imagination and your creativity appears when it wants to, for me. So I just have to kind of capitalise on it and write stuff down.
So when you come up with, you think this a random line, you make a note of that. Are you then thinking, what will go with that? Or do you then write some more random lines and think, that'll go with that, that'll go with that?
Yeah, I do that. That's the way I do it. I don't do it in a structure of this is the beginning, this is the end. I write random lines, and that line I thought was the beginning could actually be the middle of the poem. So I then expand on that line and think, what could it be about? And then sometimes I've got to the end of the poem and think, actually I need to change it now because I think it's different. And it takes a while, but you actually start off with lines. And those lines, and you'll write another line, and then you'll find that those lines are connected together in the same poem, and then you build a poem around that. So it kind of starts from the middle, normally with me, and I kind of build outwards.
Well, you come up with a descriptive title when you've written the poems and that, but you can't do it the other way around. You can't come up with a title and think, right, I'm going to...
No, the title's definitely at the end. I don't really know what the poem's about until I've actually finished it, really. I kind of write lines, listen to music, and then kind of put them all together, and then at the end I kind of think, yes, that's what the poem's about. And like I say, I'll go back and change it sometimes, and then the title comes afterwards. So I do it back to front. It's like, the way they teach it would be start at the beginning and write your poems and your verses and everything else, but I just kind of like start in the middle and kind of work outwards.
So when you're teaching then, or anyone is teaching, is the first, do you come up with a subject or a concept, or what?
They will teach you to come up with a subject. They'll teach you to structure it a certain way, stanzas in a certain way, and they'll teach all that, which is wrong, really. I kind of write my stuff. I don't have a subject. I just write a line, and then from that line, it grows into something bigger, and I don't know what it's going to grow until it's the very end. But they will teach you structure at schools. They'll teach you how to structure a poem. You need to think of a theme, a topic. And I don't really have a theme or topic. It's basically loosely love. But I kind of like... They'll teach you it's a strict way of doing things, and I couldn't do it that way.
Well, your concept, your sort of writing in reverse style of doing things, is that what's usually used by most of the modern poets, or do a lot of them come up with I'm going to write one, that's the title, and I'll write it?
Yeah, I think they'd probably do that. They'd probably think of a theme, and then have a lovely picture with it, and that would be their basis. But I mean, everyone's different. I do mine. I listen to classical music to write mine. I mean, probably not many people do that. But you need to have something to spark that creativity, and then you need to structure it. You write in a certain way. My work's gone from poetry to kind of prosy now, and a lot of poets do that now. They'll have a poetry book out, and then the next minute they'll have a novel. So
could that be next?
Well, I don't have the attention span to write a novel. I would get bored about halfway through writing it. I like to write a poem because you start and you finish it in one piece.
You're also not going to get one piece of music that's going to give you the whole plot for a whole story.
It would, and I just think kind of like, for me, I would get bored of writing a story. I have started to write a few. I get so far in, I lose, gusto. I kind of like, with a poem, you can start it and finish it in one go, and then you move on to the next one,
Well, you've got your customer base there.
Yeah.
It would probably be silly to not.
I know, they all do that. I mean, they go from... I've seen poetry that starts off verse and like the kind of way it's written, then it goes to more prose, and then the next minute they're releasing a book. Even though they've got poetry books out, they're releasing a novel. So I just don't know. I mean, some of those kind of people have already released 7 poetry books before they even get to the novel stage, and they've changed their style up into a certain way over a long time. I'm kind of like 3rd book, 4th book in. So for me, it's just like I'm still doing the same thing. And I don't know down the line. They've probably got more time to write a novel because they've got loads of team behind them and they're doing loads and they're freed up to write whatever they want to write. They haven't got to update their own social networking sites and do all that. Whereas I have to be a one-man band and kind of do everything myself. So if I had more time, probably I would. It's just, again...
Do you have to spend a lot of time on the social networking?
I do.
Do people, if you don't sort of do something every day, do people start grumbling?
Yeah, I do. I feel like it's not a pressure, but I feel as though I need to post daily because I like to kind of get an idea of what people think of my work. So it's a good place to put stuff out. If I currently write something in a day and I think I like this, will people like it? I'll put it out to see what they think. But I do think as though you spend a lot of time updating, talking to people, answering emails and everything else. You do tend to spend a lot of time on social networking sites, and I think it's just part of the course, unfortunately.
Joining me in the studio this morning, as I said, James McInerney, a local poet, born and bred in Northampton, yeah?
Yeah, all my life, unfortunately, never left anywhere, never been stuck here.
Well, there must be worse places.
There is,
There
yes.
must be.
I've been to them.
Yeah. We said earlier then that... the only way that you get your idea for a poem then is music, mainly classical,
yeah.
or film themes. I think was one of your favourite.
Yeah,
ones,
I kind of like when you watch a film and that point an emotional point in the film when the music comes on, and it makes that scene in the background. It makes it really emotional and heightened. I mean, if that wasn't there, the scene would be redundant. It wouldn't be as great as it was. So that music really makes the emotions in the scene. So I kind of thought about that and I thought, okay, let me find that music and see if it helps me to write better, and that's kind of the way I do it now. It's kind of like I can write without it, but it's kind of like it really helps me get the creativity going.
You say you can write without the music?
Yeah, I can now. Yeah, I never used to be able to, but now I can. Yeah, now I've gone more prosy kind of in the way my poetry is. I'm quite capable of doing it without the music, but I always turn to the music when I can because it kind of helps you get that emotion in the poem.
Right, now we said you don't sort of say, right, 2 o'clock till 4 o'clock, poetry time.
Yeah.
So how long typically would it take you to write a poem? I mean, I think most of your poems seem to be sort of, I don't know, what, two verse?
Yeah.
It's not even a verse, is it?
No.
But 2...
Stanzas.
Yeah.
There is. I can write one straight out sometimes, and depending on what it is, depending on how inspired you feel, or sometimes they can take ages, and they can just sit back there, and you can have one on the back burner for a long time that you just can't think of what to write while you're writing other poems. So sometimes they can just be straight away, or sometimes it can be a nightmare and really get on your nerves, and you want to get it finished, and you can't think of what to write about. So every kind of thing, it all depends.
So when you wake up in the middle of the night and you write down a line,
yes, yeah.
Then in the morning you get up and go, oh, that'll go really well with this one I've got over here.
But in the same respect, I've written something that I thought was really good and then look back on it and think, it's not that great. So you can have some good lines at night and you're lying in bed, and in the morning you think, no, it ain't that good. So it all depends. Sometimes you can edit stuff to death, really.
But are you being too critical?
I am.
Because is that bad, or is it just not as good as the others?
Well, I think I kind of edit my stuff to death, really. I'm highly critical of, because as you get more and more into the writing and you get more and more fans of your work, there is a pressure on you to think, is it good enough? Will they like it? I didn't have that pressure on me before because it was just starting out. You just wrote what you did. But as you got books out and you get people buying your books and liking your work and sharing your work, you do have this kind of pressure within you that actually, is it good, better than the last one? Will they actually like it? And there is a kind of fear, and that fear means you edit stuff. And by editing stuff, you tend to completely wipe away a poem that you actually started out that you thought was good.
So you're losing the freshness of it.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there's this, you're scared that you're going to put something out there and you're not going to get, I know it sounds superficial, but likes. People are not going to like it or comment on it and that kind of thing. Oh, was it good enough? And you do kind of question yourself.
But surely people don't have to like everything you do.
I know, but I think it's an inbuilt thing. I think it's our generation that, the amount of likes means how good you are. It's kind of inbuilt in that if people don't like it or don't share it, you think, well, do they like it? And you always, even though I wrote 3 books, you always have that doubt in your mind that is it a great poem, and I think that will always be with me. Is it good enough? And I think that kind of spurs you on to write probably maybe better stuff because you edit stuff, but then you actually think, I've got to write better than this, and it spurs you on to write.
So the self-doubting is forcing you to be better.
It can be sometimes, or it could be negative because you can wipe away a poem which you thought was good, and you edit it so much you think it ain't good enough. And you get days like that where you do feel that way. You don't know whether it's good. And I've put stuff on that thought was great, and people have loved it. And I thought, really? Do you like that? And it's like, yeah. So you never know. And that's the way it is.
We said you keep tweaking a poem. Do you ever, in the end, revert to your first version?
Yes. I've done that so many times. I've tweaked it so much it's unrecognisable from my original poem. And I thought, I'm going to go back to the original and actually what I wrote and actually use that instead. Because you try and get overcomplicated sometimes with poetry, and you overcomplicate it so much that you get lost. You don't actually know what you're writing about. So you go back to the original because you understand that. And that comes down to the fact that you want to make it brilliant and you can over-tweak it too much.
Well, regularly in the news we hear all sort of bad things about Twitter and Facebook and all these sort of things, the bullying and various things like that. But how important is social media to you?
Oh, it's lifeblood, really. I started off the days before Facebook, before Twitter and everything. I started off the basics, and when you had dial-up internet and used to hear it ringing, and now it's social net. Everyone's got their phone glued to their hand, haven't they? Really, you see everyone, and you can reach so many people in an instant by one post that you could never reach before. So you have to be on social networking sites. All the writers, actors, actresses.
If you don't silence the notifications, phone can be pinging all day.
I have to turn mine off. At night time, I have it set so at night it doesn't. The notifications are stopped till a certain time in the morning till you get up. So you can set your phone to do that. But it is noisy throughout the day when people are tweeting you or doing things like that. You get all weird sounds coming from your phone.
Now, recently you've rationalised your social media accounts. Which are the most influential ones out there, though, do you think, now? Because there's lots to choose from, isn't there?
I mean, I've never had a real success with Facebook. People use Facebook to post pictures of, like, puppies or things like that, and it's never been one which is for a professional kind of way. It's not really worked. I do use it, and I have a core group of fans that really like my work on there, so I always use it. But for me, Instagram is where kind of like it's at, because Instagram is, you can post a poem on there and it's so easy to share your work on Instagram. Some of the famous people on there who are poets use Instagram, and they focus on one account, so they will focus on Instagram. They'll still be on other accounts, but their main focus will be on building a network on Instagram, and that's kind of what I do. And I've got like 23,000 fans.
Nice.
And I've built that over years because I focused on Instagram and making sure that everything's right on there. Then I'm talking to people and interacting with people in the poetry community and saying, hey, your work's great, do you want to see mine as well? I wrote as well. And you get fans and you get friends, and Instagram is easy for poetry in that kind of sense. There's about 19 million on the hashtag poetry, 19 million posts on there. So
right.
It's a very busy place, and you have to work out over the years what works and what doesn't. And I've shed off so many different social networks. So I've started up in the hope they could be the next good thing. and kind of lost them along the way but Instagram's always kind of, and Facebook have always kind of been there for me. Twitter, not so much, but I still use Twitter, and it's good to get, you know.
Well, it's the limit of characters. You can't put a poem on.
Yeah, I had to put a picture on with, But again, that is an issue. 140 characters is not enough. Even when I put a title or information above the picture, I'm still finding myself going beyond the 140 characters because I just never understood that.
You can only really use it as a link to somewhere else, can't you?
I've never understood Twitter as why it's limited on that at all.
I don't know.
Is it server problems if they have too many? If they reduce,
is it just to make it different?
Yeah, but there was talk that they were going to make that unlimited, weren't they? At one point, when the company was in trouble, a year ago, they were going to start making it unlimited characters on there. Never happened though.
I think that'd be a little bit boring because I think the thing is now you look on Twitter. And you get it up there on your screen, and you can see there's that one, there's that one, there's that.
Yeah.
But if you can do as much as you want, you're only going to get one, and you continually scrolling. I think
you see, Tumblr's like Twitter, but you're not limited to the amount of characters. So It's basically what Twitter would be. Tumblr's exactly the same. You can post exactly the same. So I kind of use Tumblr and Twitter side by side. We
mentioned earlier that Amazon. One of your major ways of flogging your stuff all over the world. It's a part of the world where your poems are especially popular.
America, probably, because it's the biggest kind of area. A lot of Americans tend to like my work, and of course Amazon's big in America, so it tends to be there. I mean, I've had all over the world, but that's the kind of and it's nice to have different countries, people from different countries who speak different languages, all buying your books because they love it. But America seems to be the biggest.
Do you get any feedback from America? I mean, why do they like it? Is it the quaint old Britain concept? Or?
It's probably seeing too much Downton Abbey. I think we live in, drive around in carriages. But no, I think people like poetry, and poetry is really popular at the moment, especially like on the social networking sites. People like to see things, and they like to share them on their walls, and then their friends see it, and then it's kind of a snowball effect of, oh, who's he? I know him. His books are available. It's kind of word of mouth, really. And I think people, like I said before, people relate to poetry because they can read it and find themselves in a poem. So it's that kind of thing. Oh, they can say that's me. So then they want to share it, and kind of, they don't see it. It kind of loses it's poetry anymore. It's just something they read, they relate to. It is poetry, but it becomes more than that. So that's why it's still popular, I think.
You do various lengths of poem. What sort of feedback do you get? Do people like a short poem, or do they like something that they can sort of get into in depth?
I've learned over the years that people don't like long poems. I've done poems that were 2 or 3 pages long, and then by the time the 3rd page is there, they're kind of like, what was it on about again? I forgot. So I have found that standard smaller poems work, but also taking sections of a poem and then typing it up and then putting it online. Actually, people don't realise it's part of a bigger poem, and they actually like that itself. So you could write a poem, and out of that poem you could have 2 or 3 other poems.
So are they liking it sort of like, I suppose, almost a thought for the day type of thing?
It's like a snippet. I mean, I could write a poem and then take 2 or 3 snippets out of that big poem and make smaller poems out of it, and people like a thought for the day or that part they relate to. So even though you wrote a poem they don't like the long poems, you could take parts of that long poem and you could then share it into small snippets. And people's lives are so busy, their news feeds are so busy, they don't want to sit there and read a massive long poem that's going to be like 10 minutes or something. They just want a quick snippet of poetry, and you have to give that snippet. But I mean, the long poems are still in the books. So when they buy the books, they've got all the poems. But for their daily news feed, they just want to read a snippet so they can read it, love it, like it, share it, and then move on to the next thing.
Do you find that your fans, I suppose, for want of a better phrase, do they fully grasp your poetry straight away, or do they need to actually read it a few times and that's pick up a little bit each time?
Yeah, I think the people that really like your work, that check in daily to see what you've posted, they will like what you've posted and they'll share it, and you get the fans that are really into that. I think kind of like everyone who reads that poem will read it differently. So, like I say, people relate to a certain poem in a certain way because they've been through something. So, even though they may interpret that poem one way, somebody else who reads it might interpret it a completely different way. And I think that's why poetry lives on for as long as it has.
So it's not like a book. You've not got a particular plot.
No. And like I say, everything I wrote, it could be, I know what it's about, but someone else who reads it might actually think, that's about something else, and that's fair play to them.
Have you had that sort of feedback where someone said, "I really like that poem you did. It reminded me of such and such," and you're thinking, "It's not what I wrote."
Yeah, it is. I have had that, and I kind of like I said, and that's nice because it means that again, poetry is so universal that when you write something, other people see different things in it. So that's kind of like how it works. And people will say, but I'll never say what it's about because, like anything, you never reveal about what you're writing about. You just put it out there, and then people interpret it however they want to.
Right, now, I'm looking at these cards. These are cards that I've used as sort of pointers for questions for the last 2 or 3 visits that we've had. And I've got here, are printed books losing out to e-books?
Well, I would have said that a long time ago, yes, but actually no. I mean, in my sales of e-books and kind of printed books outweigh them a lot. I thought that the new way forward was e-books. We had the Kindle readers, we had the e-readers. You can get it on your phone now. You can get the Kindle apps. Actually, you don't even need a Kindle reader. But no, people want a book. If they're going to pay money for a digital file, they're not going to do it. They're going to want to buy a book which they can put on their shelf and keep forever. Whereas you've paid a lot of money just for a digital file. So they're kind of like on the way out, really.
Yeah,
really.
It's funny. It's just not worked, has it?
No.
And I mean, I think the interesting point that sort of that proves that point as well is how popular your printed framed items are. People like to have something tangible, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, I go to Comic Cons and I go to those kind of things and sell those things. I type them up and I sign them and frame them. And people love them. I mean, I had people come up and buy 3 or 4 at a time because they can say, that's for a friend, I'll wrap it up. And they give it as a present. So not necessarily for them. They'll say, oh, that's about my friend who's lost their life to cancer or they've had bad things happen to or something like that. But they'll love this. So kind of like people see things that not only relate to them, but also relate to other people they know who are going through tough times, or it's about friendship or something like that. And they'll buy loads of frames, and they're very popular. I didn't think about doing them, but people have said to me they've never seen anything like that before. And
have you got a discreet line at the bottom of all of them? You like this, buy the book.
Yeah, well, I tend to give them a business card, and then they'll go online. I say, if you like this, I do have books, and at the events, I do have the books as well, and I can sell the books, obviously.
Stick it on the back of the frame.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's just a good way to meet people and to show, and to take poetry instead of being in a book, put it in a frame, sign it. And people love the idea of it, and it's nice, and it's just another way of. Then people like the frame, and they go, "Oh, have you got books? We'll buy the books." It's just another avenue of making book sales at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, you've got social media, local radio, local press, such as it is, not particularly healthy in Northamptonshire.
Not at all, no.
What else can you do to promote your book?
I mean, that's it, really. At the current time, other than having a celebrity buy one and Taylor Swift or somebody buying one, and there's not much more you can do. You're kind of limited to the social networking sites, and you've got let's say the local media is kind of dying out now. I used to be part of so many things when I first started, and a lot of things have disappeared. So a lot of doors have closed in that kind of sense. But you've just got to move forward, and you've got to embrace the social networking sites, keep writing the books, and just see what happens. I mean, before Facebook, I didn't think there'd be a Facebook, and before Instagram, but new things appear, and you just got to go with the times.
Now, I think when we last spoke, you were just going to start doing some things with Northamptonshire libraries.
Yes.
You've been doing things in school?
Yeah, kind of like I've diversified a lot. I've done Northamptonshire libraries, I've done schools, I've done kind of workshops, I've been asked to do so many, loads of events, and you just kind of go with, I've never kind of said no to anything, because saying yes to things leads to different opportunities, and I've got things and I've kind of capitalised on them, and that's led to something else, and that's led to something else. But you've got to be this mind that a lot of things, doors do close. So like a lot of the media places disappear, the newspapers go. So you've got to have a lot of things kind of going at once, knowing that some things will disappear. And kind of just like, that's kind of why I've worked over the years, unfortunately. Kind of, it's just a lot of things are closed.
It is, things do change. I mean, 5 years ago, we would never have thought that magnificent Chronicle and Echo building would have been flat.
Overnight, really. It disappeared overnight. One minute it was there, the next minute the whole thing had completely gone.
Yeah.
And I used to deal with a lot with the Herald and Post. I used to be like a blogger for them. I used to do and appear in there kind of pretty much once a week at one point.
And they virtually vanished overnight
They vanished as well. And it was a shame because they were a good newspaper. But then the Chronicle and Echo's gone to once a week. So, I mean, maybe they've all gone online. You know, Chronicle Echo is on Facebook, they're on Twitter, they're on everything, and they update via there. So eventually, maybe they'll just disappear as a newspaper and just put everything. You know, even the local magazines that come for your door, they've they've cancelled the magazines and now on social network because the prices are too high.
It is, but unfortunately, without the revenue from the
advertising,
from the printed version of the Chronicle Echo, can they afford to have, I mean, I know they've only got a little office now with a couple of people in it, but can they afford to just sit there doing the
social sides?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a lot of them have gone that way, you know, and that's the way they've kind of gone from newspapers to local magazines. They've kind of ditched the magazine and said we're online now. And that's
with the immediacy of social media and that now, a week old news for around about, I don't know what it is, 160, something like that.
Yeah.
Chronicle Echo.
It's old, isn't it? It's gone. And to be fair, you can log on to Facebook or Twitter and see a live update from all the news channels. Even your local news update daily with the latest news. Why would you want to read something that's a week old?
Well, also, I mean, I find as well with Twitter and with Facebook, if you belong to some of the local Northampton groups, the Northampton Past and Present and various other ones like that, you tend to get a better news coverage of things that are happening in town than you would from the Chronicle. And
like I say, and like I say, it's week-old news with the Chronicle. So eventually, you know, maybe they will die out and they'll just go online, and that's kind of the way we'll all be online in the future. There'll be no point going out of the house.
No, that's it's good and it's frightening. I mean, I think with online shopping, we've mentioned Amazon, because Amazon, you can pretty much buy anything you want from Amazon.
Yeah. From
a pair of shoelaces to
food.
A fridge freezer.
Yeah.
Even food now.
But even Tesco deliver to your door. All the major supermarkets deliver to your door now. You know, you can watch movies online via Netflix, and you got your Spotify for your music online. Everything's online.
But the drawback of it is that we've now got a Chronicle Echo flattened site. We've got next to no shops in town.
That's a sign of the time. I think that's just the way it's going to go. And I think it can only get even more online in the future, because literally everyone lives on their phones, don't they? They live, even the next generation of children, like my children, live on their phones. So the people they want to market to are going to be on their phones. They're not going to want to go and buy a newspaper in town, our children, so they're going to have to kind of...
Do you think, though, perhaps it could partially reverse? Because we've got the situation with vinyl.
I was going to say vinyl, yeah.
I mean, today, incidentally, is, I think it's National Record Shop Day, or Record Store Day, and for some strange reason, I don't quite understand the concept of why you would want to go back to vinyl, because... To me, it's always been the music that's the most important thing, not whether it's on cassette, vinyl.
But I went into Tesco's the other day, and they've got a whole stand now of vinyl.
Right.
Yeah, in the main Tesco's, which is all the latest albums actually on vinyl.
I'd have to go up to the loft and get a...
But they do say, isn't it a crisper sound on vinyl when you play it through a...
Yes, I mean, I think it's down to the technicality, isn't it, that with... vinyl,
yes,
you've got your arc of audio. You turn it up, and it's like that. Digital, it's either on or off.
Yeah,
it's 1 or 0.
Yeah.
So it's true. But then again, are you listening to the song, or are you listening to the technicalities of the recording?
They'll be bringing mini disc back next.
Brilliant format. Absolutely superb
Although it disappeared.
That never took off.
MP3,
I've got hundreds of them.
Yeah.
I have got hundreds of mini discs.
But it came out at the wrong time, because MP3 came out straight after that, and it kind of killed it straight away, didn't it?
Now, looking at your offerings on site, photography features fairly heavily within your online presence. How important is that to you?
When I first started, I got into photography because it's another form of poetry, isn't it? It's kind of art, really. And I got into black and whites. And I love black and white photography because it's very emotional. It can be emotional with the blacks and the whites. And poetry overtook photography, really. I still use the kind of like photography in my books. I use all different pictures and everything I've taken over the years.
Digital or traditional negatives?
No, it's digital. I'm afraid. I'm not that generation. But I kind of like... I still love photography. Again, it's when do I fit it in? I'm so busy. But I do have a kind of expensive camera, and I have kind of a studio, which is a proper studio of everything. I have all that, and I have all the lights and everything else. But again, it's getting all out, setting it up. But I do love photography. I love the fact that you can then take that photo, put it onto a computer, and then completely change it with current technology. But
the trouble is, it makes a mockery of the camera never lies concept.
Yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah. So, I mean, again, we get back to the digital side of it again. Everything's going digital again. So, you'll take a photo on probably an old camera, probably scan it in on a scanner, and then digitally enhance it on your computer. So, everything's going digital. But I kind of do every now and then dabble in photography. It's just fitting it in. Just again, you got how many hours in the day are there to fit? You've got to sleep in that time.
Of course, yeah. We haven't had you read a poem yet.
Oh no, you have not.
What are you going to read for us?
I can read a new one.
Oh,
it's more.
Is this a world first?
Yeah, it's more prosy than poetry, which is kind of like my new book, The Way It's Gone. So I can do that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It's called When I Leave. When I leave, it will not be to the sound of synchronised footsteps as I'm carried through a storm of tears. My final memories won't be of loved ones, all dressed in black, allowing the bitter aftertaste of sorrow into their hearts. No, when I leave, it shall be a joyous occasion, a ticker-tape parade, a sea of every colour, without tide or wave, so that I may drift at my leisure towards a glorious end. And though the sky shall become my resting place, I will not wear tired eyes that are required to sleep, nor shall I wallow in a valley of despair. Instead, I will become the sun, the moon, and all the stars, forever shining, a constant reminder to those who I've loved, and who loved me in return, that although there exists a distance between us, even at its greatest, we shall never be far apart.
And what's that called?
That's called When I Leave.
When I Leave. Yeah, it's not normal poetry, but
No.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of way they don't necessarily have to rhyme. They don't have to do anything like that. It just has to be something that people can relate to. That people, who've lost loved ones, that they're not lost completely. And it's just like kind of the way poetry is now. And if it works, then you continue to do that, and it works.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how can our listeners find out more about you?
They can go to Amazon and type in my name, which is the usual surname. But if you do type into Google James Poetry and Wix, W-I-X, it brings up my main website at the very top. So you can go buy the books through there. You can see everything I've done over the years on all the media, radio, and everything, and what is actually coming up in the future as well. So it's just like my main website, really. And so the books are on Amazon, and hopefully books will be in the stores soon.
Yep, 2 books out there at the moment, Bloom and...
In Between the Lines.
And what's the third one? Do we know what it's called yet?
It's called Red.
Going to be called Red.
It's finished, completed. I've just got to do a bit of artwork for it and do the front cover, but I've got till December to get that finished, so I've got a long time. But I'm currently writing the next book at the same time, so...
What's that going to be called? Blue?
No.
Are you going to do like Ed Sheeran?
Ed Sheeran do
plus minus...
Yeah. I don't know. I kind of like make it up as I go along.
Yeah.
But that's going to be out Christmas next year as well. So it's going to be like a book a year to keep them going, keep everyone happy. That's the plan, anyway.
Absolutely superb. Thanks for visiting. We'll see you again very, very soon.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Kevin Askew.